Well, that concludes another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. This episode was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You know, everybody in agriculture understands the importance of soil health. We also keep an eye on our soil better than we ever did through advanced soil testing. But what if there was a company that provided predictive analytics, not just checking out nutrients and all the elements that are in there, but also could tell you the degree of risk you face with disease and pest pressure? That's right, Pattern Ag can do that. They actually can tell you, hey, you're going to have a real issue here. You can preemptively, proactively treat for corn rootworm or cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome before the problem actually starts costing you yield. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to find the nearest rep that can help you start doing better for your soil. Well, greetings and welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. We're talking today about successfully occupying tomorrow's future and basically how you can sell to a shrinking consumer base in agriculture. Listen, this is not fatalistic. This is not in any way being negative, but we do have to admit one tiny little fact. There is consolidation in the ag space. Now, the reality is if you look at the National Agricultural Statistics Service numbers, the Census of Agriculture, which comes out every 5 years, they will tell you that the number of farms actually increased just a little bit for the 2017 census. And that means that there's some yuppies that bought 3 acres in the country and now produce organic arugula. Will they be your customer? Likely not. If you listen to the Business of Agriculture podcast, you're probably not selling inputs for somebody that's in the 3 acres of organic arugula business. So here's the thing. Ag consolidation has been happening for a long time, essentially since 1930s. We hit peak farm. If you pick up my book, Food Fear, which our friend Joel, one of our guests, has prominently displayed in the background, Joel has my book, Food Fear, and I address this in one of my chapters that we have seen agricultural consolidation at the producer level since the 1930s when we hit peak farm of about 6 or 8 million farms in the United States of America. Now we're talking about 2 million actual farms, 2 million farms, of which 105,000, 5% of those farms produce 75% of all the agricultural production revenue in the United States. So how do you successfully occupy tomorrow? How do you sell to a consolidating ag customer base? That's the subject today and probably impacts a lot of you that are listening to this. I've got Eric Lohse. He's with Midwest Ag Advisors. He's also brought on one of his people, Joel Farley, who's with Midwest Ag Advisors. Midwest Ag Advisors had me speak to their customers at the end of January between 3 towns, 2 of them in Minnesota, 1 of them in South Dakota. I got to know them, and we sat down and had beers after one of those meetings, and we talked about this very subject. And I said, let's make that a topic for the Business of Agriculture. Eric and Joel, thanks for being here.
You bet. Thanks for having us.
Little background, Midwest Ag Advisors, what do you do? Give it to me, Joel.
So Midwest Ag Advisors, giving you kind of the quick elevator speech. We're in the risk management business. We are a commodity brokerage house. So we do futures, options, that type of services, as well as just put together risk management programs for ag specific businesses. So everything from the livestock sector, cattle, hogs, as well as grain farmers, corn, soybeans, and wheat. So anyway, that's the primary focus of our one half of our risk management business. The other half is our crop insurance, as well as livestock revenue protection products. So anyway, pretty much long story short, we just offer lots of risk-based products to our clients, which are all
commodity marketing advice, hence the advisors, and crop insurance, which also ties into the issue of risk. By the way, Eric Lohse, this is your father's business. You're a legacy, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess you could say that. He started the brokerage in the 70s. He came back to. I live in Southwest Minnesota. He came back to the area, bought out a brokerage house in the 70s. Operated that until the mid-2010s. I came back and joined him. Brought on my business partner Rick Warner. So we. Kind of join forces to diversify the business a bit, which might lend into the topic we're going to talk about today. But so we continue to offer the commodity services. As Joel said, we added crop insurance, and we also do grain marketing programs, either per acre. We currently have an app plug in which we push out some of our marketing content and stuff as well. So that'll eventually be a subscription-based service that'll complement what we currently do. So yeah, about 40, 50 years of experience here, Dad. He still rolls in every once in a while when he's not up at the lake and grabs some phones and talks to some folks. So
I want to hear all about all of that, but I want to address one thing real quickly. Joel has obviously gone to meetings and he's been told you've got to have an elevator speech. I hate it when people talk to me on elevators. And so how this whole thing about having an elevator speech ever came about, if people start talking to me in the elevator, I find it to be very awkward. So I don't understand why we have to go around talking about elevator speeches, or more importantly, giving elevator speeches. So Joel, if you and I are ever hanging out in an elevator, I'd appreciate if you just be quiet. I mean, I would be more comfortable if you would just be quiet. But anyway, all kidding aside, you've got less customers than your dad had. True or false, Eric?
Yeah, I would say that's true to a degree. Definitely seen a consolidation, mostly due to, just his generation kind of working its way out, some of the younger generation coming in. And I think our challenge immediately is the younger generation, speaking specifically of these mid-30s, mid-40s, is their understanding of futures and options is not, I would say, as savvy as what that older generation was. So part of our challenge working with our customers is to educate them and get them to understand better how the futures and futures options work. And I know our crop insurance agents have a bit of an uphill battle with some of that as well, because the sentiment's always been to this point, Dad handles that. I drive the tractor, I do the fun stuff, right? I don't need to worry about that. So we're constantly having to remind them that at some point, Dad's not going to be there. Or Mom, to help with that stuff. So we find it important to educate them on that. But what's a challenge at times too is if we can't get 50 guys in a room and teach them futures and options. They tend to not want to ask questions and say they understand when they don't. So we do a lot of one-on-one stuff, get the crayons out, scribble around a little bit, get them to understand and ask all the dumb questions they want.
By the way, he almost sounds like he's being a little bit mean, but he's not. The point is that what you sell, it's not like, Joel, a jug of glyphosate. It's not like I need to go and fill the truck with bags of seed. It's a little bit of a different thing. It's advice, right? I mean, it's products also, but it's advice. And so when you think about selling to that, it's information, and I'm thinking about this. Joel's a little younger than us, so I was just going to him because you talked about the generational thing, and I want to get into that. Before I get into it, I want to first know, Joel, paint me a picture of the customer base. What does the customer base for Midwest Ag Advisors look like?
Well, I mean, a lot of the clients are obviously probably in that upper 50s to mid 60s, type of demographic. Again, they're in a position where they may be actively doing a succession plan. So there might be a kid on the way or somebody that they're passing the ground off to. But there's a massive age gap between those. You've got, a lot of the baby boomer type generations, and then be it a Gen X or a millennial type, that's following behind. And we all know, because we've been in, countless presentations, et cetera, talking about the difference in communicating across generations. And that's what we're trying to figure out at Midwest Ag, right? That's why Eric, you had the shameful plug about our app, but that's there to communicate information, which we're in the business to our new and evolving client base, which, are the guys that use apps. They want it at their fingertip. They want, for you to be able to communicate to them in something that they're familiar with.
So it's interesting.
They're comfortable with. So
it's interesting. So, and if you're listening versus watching, and I am available, by the way, it's on my YouTube channel, but also in the last 3 months, we've now become the third most popular viewed show on Acres TV. So if you are listening, this won't matter. But if you're watching, you can probably see that Joel's a little younger than us. You're about what, mid-30s?
I am. Yep.
All right. So you described the demographics of, you've got a lot of people that are in that late 50s, early 60s, and probably a few that are a touch older than that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And then generally, because you're selling to producers, agricultural producers, it tends to be family. So then that person that's 65, many cases has a son or daughter that's coming into the fold, right?
Yep.
Okay. So when you talked about then, or Eric talked about the selling isn't going hustling them. It's none of this good, better, best, none of this stuff that we learned at Sears about, walk them over to the garage door openers and show them the good, better, best. By the way, I worked at Sears for about a month, and that's how I learned the good, better, best. It's not that. It's a different thing. Eric, when you talked about this, you said it was educating, and you said you can't bring 50 of them. You did bring 50 of them into the room when I was there, and that was more outlook. It wasn't here's how you buy and here's how you use risk management practices. It was not about the hard part about options and futures, right?
No, right, exactly. That's more of a 10,000-foot view. Let's bring guys in. Let's give them some value with the content Damian had. We brought in a gentleman to talk markets. I've done that in the past. It's proven that if we try to bring folks in to teach them, and you go through a concept and ask them, do you understand? They all say yes, because they don't want to feel dumb, right? They don't want to feel like the guy next to him gets it and I don't. And so they don't ask the questions they need to understand. And again, like you said, I'm not cutting anybody down. What we're trying to tell people is the futures and futures options market is a tool to manage your risk for buyers and sellers of those commodities. The notion is that it's a speculative marketplace and it's gambling, right? And so guys, especially younger generation, has that sentiment regarding it. So for us to educate them, like, no, these are tools that you can use. You don't have to, but you owe it to your operation to understand how they work and what the different products can do for you.
All right. So Joel, when we talk about selling to successfully occupying the futures by selling to a consolidating ag customer base, I look at it and say, I know that when I was younger, I know what ag looked like. There was a dairy farm like ours on every county road in Huntington, Indiana, milking 50 to 100 cows, cement stave silo or two, blah, blah, blah. That's not there anymore. It's very obvious to me, having been around this my whole life, what consolidation looks like. You're 20 years younger than me. Is it obvious to you? Or is it just always been this way? And do you even think, did you even think when I said, let's talk about this topic, did you even think this was a thing? Or you're like, what the hell? It's not a big deal to me. I'm just kind of curious from a generational thing. Do you perceive a rapid consolidation in ag and producer ag? Or is it just kind of like, it's always been this way?
Yes, I do. I'm witnessing it with my own customer base. Obviously, you have a client that might be a good client, but they're in their 70s and, they've got all daughters or whatever the circumstances. And there is no next generation, and they retire right off into the sunset, and somebody swoops in, the land hawk, whatever it might be, that picks up their whole 700 acres in one swath, and boom, you've got consolidation. We see that in all industries, but ag in particular. I also think, too, when you look at the other support industries, like the machinery industry, they know there's consolidation going on. That's why they're making bigger and bigger equipment, right? Why can every business cover more land and whatever? It's all done because they know everybody's needing to do more with less, right? And anyway, that's a whole other topic. You can get into labor and et cetera, and my opinions on that. But anyway, that the business is going to where it's consolidating. Operations are going to be bigger. And personally, I think the more progressive guys, the ones that are more agile and able to adapt, are the ones that are going to continue to get bigger. So, Midwest Ag, I know at least my client base tries to identify who those clients are and, hook your saddle to them, because honestly, otherwise, you're in a business that's going to get smaller, and you need to be with the guys that are growing. Otherwise, you're going to run yourself out of business because it's happening,
Hey, before we get to Eric's, and I want to get his take on something as far as then strategies that he's implementing to appeal and be successful, because as Joel just said, you want to be where the success is going to happen, because consolidation is obviously going to happen. But before we get into that, I want to ask you a question. Do you spend time looking for answers Chances are you do. If you are working in the business of agriculture, especially if you're at the production level, it's my understanding that 19% of the time a farmer has is spent looking for answers to questions. Why don't you shorten your distance and time to get the solutions you need with an app? You put it on your phone. It's called AgVisor Pro. My buddy Rob Syke, entrepreneur that works in agriculture, started this, and he's like, hey, man, let's make it so you can get good information. Why you want to go on Twitter and have some dumbass ridicule you because they feel good about, that you're dumb? No, get the app, AgVisor Pro. All you do is just go on here and you can create a profile. You don't have to create a profile, but you should, because you probably are an expert at something. So you need somebody that can help you navigate these waters. There are people like that on AgVisor Pro. It's an app for experts in agriculture. And if you want, you can even set up shop and you can become an expert. AgVisor Pro. It's an app, put it on your phone. And you know what? It's going to shorten the distance and the time to getting the solutions you need. Doesn't cost you anything, but if you want to engage the services of somebody on there, you can enter into a contractual arrangement with them. It's free to start. Go in there and check it out, AgVisor Pro. All right. Joel just said something, Eric, that I thought was really interesting. He said, okay, there's a 70-year-old operator. It's a good customer. And, his 3 daughters live in Minneapolis. It's kind of a common sort of an example right here. He's going to hang it up. The girls want to be involved a little bit. They'd like dad and mom to keep the 40 acres and the barns, and that way they can bring the grandkids there, but they don't really care about the rest of the stuff. So he retires and gets rid of 700 acres. Whether he keeps owning it or renting it, whatever, somebody else is operating those acres. And now that's what's happened. It's been happening for a long, long time. It's been happening for more than just this year. It's been happening for decades. And what now? You want that customer. You want that person that picked up those 700 acres as your customer. And this is happening all over the place. So in some cases, that works. In some cases, it doesn't. You just lose a customer. And that means what? What do you do?
Probably back to the drawing board or try to go find a new customer to replace that customer, depending on what the relationships the person that takes over that ground has. And if they're open to a discussion with us. And at the end of the day, our industry is customer service. I mean, and our goal is to always outdo what the next level of service of our competitors is. And, so things can change, obviously, in a lot of different ways, but we always try to be providing what we see as exceptional customer service. That's most of our backgrounds. And at the end of the day, we're all offering similar products, even crop insurance, even more so with federally subsidized programs. And, insurance companies have a couple of different private products that they offer, but it comes down to what is the service that you're being offered. And, we talk a little bit about consolidating customer bases. We're also in a consolidating provider environment as well, where our job to do things right is to find those other professionals that make Midwest Ag the best it can be and offer the best service and maybe bring in new customers that way. And then we can utilize some cross-sellability. So in terms of somebody new coming in, as much as I want to drive down their driveway and, throw a cart at them and stuff, that's one of the challenges we have a little bit, because ag relationships, I think, Joel, you'd agree with this. I know my business partner would. They're very dedicated once they've established those. Sometimes it takes a while to convince people to make changes on some of that.
So you said a few things there, and I want to go again to Joel. Joel, first off, he said relationships, and we've always said that. They taught you that in sales class back when I was, taking a sales class at Purdue, 30 plus years ago. Does it matter anymore? I can order stuff on my phone. I can, I'm the 29-year-old. I check out everything online. I don't even use the phone to talk to people. Does the relationship matter to people that are younger than you?
Yeah, it for sure does. Ag is probably one of those few industries that it's all relationship based, especially the stuff that we do for guys. It's such a vital piece of their overall business. Like, they're not going to just trust anybody with managing their revenue, making sure that, they're insured up to adequate levels, taking the right coverages, making sure their operating notes are secured, then taking positions, in an actively traded market.
So you would say that you would say, because it is advice, kind of like my financial advisor, you are in a similar role. A 29-year-old will buy their dinner on an app. They will buy the pair of shoes online, but they're not going to take business advice that could be in millions of dollars, right? Of outcomes. They won't do that just via TikTok.
In my experience, there's been fads where, I'm going to go and place trades at the minimum cost, right? $5.99 for a round turn. And we have clients that they come to us and they say, I'm going to go do this. Your fees are too high, et cetera. Then they go and they find out what it's like when you actually go and you execute trades on your own behalf. And there's nobody on the other end of the phone when things go awry to talk you through this, trade mechanism that you're somewhat in understanding of how it works, but not completely. And anyway, where I'm going with this is inevitably they usually come back to us because the reality is once that human element disappears, and again, they do it because of price usually or whatever, they realize what they're missing. And it's like, you don't have that person that understands your business, that understands what you need in order to, get these broad-based products to work on your farm. And you got to have the human element to do that.
Okay. I first off, the listeners probably saying, you told us you were going to give us strategies for successfully occupying the future in a consolidating ag customer base. But the reality is we just gave a couple and we're going to get back to it. We're going to hit on all of them. But you said relationship, which is something that's overused, but you gave a good example there, Joel, is that fine, go away. And I get it. You're going to go away and you're going to be baited by the $5.99 fast trade. And then you get hung, you're going to say, oh, shit, this didn't work out so good. And that's where you think it comes back to you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, and to add a note to that, I often thought in the past, as I watched my father do this business, that at some point futures would go down the same road as stocks and E-Trade and all that stuff. And the reality is you get into this industry, there's too much risk. There's far too much risk. Yeah. And our relationship with the clearinghouses, whoever people clear with, whoever brokers clear with, is that we know our customer. We know that this customer is good for this position that they're putting on. Because at times it can be a fast track to make or lose, more oftentimes, money for the speculative marketplace, which is not really what we, I mean, that's fine. That's done. But we really try to stay rooted in risk management. And that's how we utilize the futures and futures options market. But you just can't, if you want to go trade online, they have no way of knowing who you are because anybody can fudge a risk, a risk analysis and say, I got plenty of money when I don't. When you owe E-Trade $100,000 and you don't have it, that's why they've never done it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analysis. It's one thing for the young kid to be trading meme stocks with an online brokerage that they stuck $10,000 in it. It's basically it's a video game essentially for them. It's totally. But this is a little different ball of wax. Okay, relationship was one of the things, and also letting the person go and experiment and come back was one of your solutions. All right, you talked about service. Eric said this is about service. Let me just tell you something. This is something I want to share with you, Joel, that you've probably already noticed. But even if you're in this business for 20 more years and you get to be my age, let me just tell you where this goes. Every business person you talk to that is a service provider, which is like me, like you, they're going to say, what separates you from the competition? Well, it's our service. And finally, I say, you know what? That's bullshit. Because I've never talked to an entrepreneur, a business person, a service provider that said, hey, you know what we suck at? We suck at service. We won't even return your calls. In fact, if you walk into our offices, we're going to tell you to get the hell out. We hate customers. You know what? Screw you. Nobody ever says that. Everybody says, well, our service sets us apart. I think at some point you got to call BS on that. Am I right?
It doesn't mean we don't keep striving for that, but to a degree, Damian, you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, yeah, we all tout that we're the best. I'm sure everybody would agree with that sentiment in terms of our competitors and stuff. But
I just stumped Joel with that, and Eric had to hop in as usual.
He did, and I probably jumped in over top of him. I'm sure he had a really good one in the hopper.
Okay. By the way, there's a truth to it for everybody. That's why I guess I call it BS. There's a truth to it. If you provide a service, you should be good at service. And the thing is, to pretend that somehow everyone else sucks at it and you're just amazing is also kind of a misguided approach, I think, because the shop down the street doesn't think they suck at it either, right?
So I think what Damian's getting at, and I actually say this to prospects on a regular basis. The reality of the situation is, yes, we're in a service business. By you saying I have good service, it doesn't have to be taken as that the next guy does a poor job of it. I mean, the reality is, in the risk management business, and this is what I tell clients, we all need a partner in risk management, right? I have a certain capacity. As a 35-year-old guy, I can only service so many clients adequately, right? So what I always try to tell guys is, if you're not going to work with me, go find a partner in risk management, because it's something that your business needs. And that's just something that I think, needs to be a takeaway is, Midwest Ag Advisors is doing the best we do in our footprint with our client base that we can service the best way that they deserve to be. But honestly, do we have the capacity to service all 2 million farmers across the United States? Absolutely not. And there's other people that are doing a great job of the exact same thing that we're doing. But anyway, that's always my takeaway. I mean, it really is.
It's a solid takeaway. So by the way, you said we have an app. And so I'm holding up my phone again. If you happen to be listening, I'm holding up my phone. And in fact, I just got a notice from AgVisor Pro, who's sponsoring this episode. And it has a question about cattle production, which is kind of an interesting thing. You get a notice, somebody's looking for an answer about cattle. So then obviously the cattle expert can then say, hey, bud, I can help you out. I run 300 head of cows in Montana. Here's been my experience, blah, blah. That's what this does. So your app is something on the phone. And you said this is a new thing we're offering to be competitive in a consolidating ag customer base. But you also said 70-year-old with 700 acres in Minnesota, he just got rid of his flip phone. He's probably not going to be using the Midwest Ag Advisors app. So talk to me about where you think that goes.
Oh,
is it getting used?
For sure.
Analytics show that it is. And honestly, it might be some of our 70-year-old guys that are the ones listening. The more egregious offenders might be the younger, busier millennial, right? But I think, we touched on it as we think about, service is something we always want to provide good. But what the app is really trying to do is allow what you brought up, Damian, where people don't always, part of the relationship with the younger generation isn't to talk to people all the time. They maybe want to listen. They want to find that quick hitting spot on their phone where I can take a quick look. What are these guys thinking? Which is why we're trying to update that app to have different trade strategies that are relevant for, let's say, tomorrow's prospective plannings report. What do we think is a position that you could take on that? We're also integrating some of the marketing program into that. So the reason we're doing that, it's for the customer that doesn't maybe necessarily want to call in and say, hey, I want an open account and do a bunch of other stuff. I just want some advice and I want to listen to some commentary and some people talk about what these markets are doing. The app is trying to provide that, right? And we're trying to figure that out as we go too. There's no blueprint to what's the right way to proceed.
I think we should talk about demographics really quickly. Joel used the term, and then we talked about the difference in age and whatever. There's this. It's been going on forever. I took an advertising class at Purdue, and I remember it was 18 to 24 and then 30. And then the last demographic that they ever even slotted for Nielsen ratings for looking at who's watching your commercial was 54 years old, which I will be this summer. And then there's nothing. And you're like, well, what the hell is this all about? Do you mean that I don't still buy stuff after age 54? Well, of course I still buy stuff. But the idea used to be, well, your decisions are made. Damian's already a Coors Banquet drinker. He's probably not going to switch over to, Budweiser. So why advertise to him? That was kind of the idea. But I think that's misguided, especially that we live longer than we used to, and we presumably should be working longer than we used to, and we're also still consumers. And then, of all things, in our business, we've been seeing this every census of agriculture. The average American farmer is about 60, 59 and a half years old, I think is the number right now. So this idea that we're going to only succeed if we reach out to the 27-year-olds is probably misguided for everybody, but sure as heck for ag. What do you guys think?
I agree. And I see it firsthand. I got guys that went from the flip phone to a smartphone, and I help them install the app on their phone and think they'll never look at that again. Well, if Joel misses one morning of commentary, guess who the first guy calling me to see if something wrong with his app is? It's that freaking 70-year-old guy calling me like, hey, what the hell? Does the app down? Like, you're listening? Yeah, every day.
So do you pick up, I mean, if you had, Joel, a 59, let's say 59 and a half, that's the average age. Have you had a 59 and a half year old customer brand new come to you? Because it proves the point that you're going to be appealing to people that are. I think if you want to successfully occupy a consolidating future, that 59-year-old in production ag is probably, well, first off, he's average, or she, and is going to also probably be in business for another 12 years before they hand off to the daughters of Minneapolis. So you're missing out on 12 years of revenue if you think that a 59 and a half year old couldn't be a new prospect. Am I right?
For sure. For sure. And it's funny you bring that up. So my wife's in a different industry. She's a financial advisor, but she works with a lot of guys in ag. And she always asks me, Joel, what type of guys would you identify as being a prospect for you? And, we have a lot of the same light customers. I mean, people with wealth generally are older, right? And those are people that she's working with. And then she's like, well, yeah, but this guy's like 62. Do you want to work with him? And I'm kind of like, well, yeah, you might have 10, 15 more years. And that was a learning curve for her because it's like, really? And I'm like, well, yeah, actually, this is when it's starting to get fun. Everything's getting paid for. They own all their land, and ag's different in that regard,
So I just think I just heard another strategy to succeed in a consolidating customer base is don't think, like you said, other businesses would look at a 60-year-old and say, yeah, they're off the reservation. And for us, you can say, like, you can still drive a combine that steers itself with auto steer when you're 62 and probably, like you said, have 10 more good years because you're not stressed. You're not out there like working a second job. It could be a very good customer for us. So there we go.
For sure.
You talked about diversification of services and revenue, and you made a phone call to Rick, Eric. And I know, Rick, I've worked with you guys. That's crop insurance. That was never your thing. And that's not what you and Joel currently do, but it's certainly part of what the ball of product is now at Midwest Ag Advisors. When did you make that decision? And I think I know why. It's because diversification of revenue. Was that the only reason?
Yeah, I mean, I was heavily influenced by my dad too when we started this. He spent 4 decades of sitting in an office alone, dealing with the stresses of the ups and downs of the markets and all the questions that he got from his customers regarding that and concerns that go with it. And people that know the futures industry know that, the business ebbs and flows with the market. Sometimes it's not the most consistent thing to work in. And the crop insurance right away, the notion with that, my dad told me right away, I would try to diversify into other lines of service if this is a route you want to go. Well, at that time, Rick was looking for a change. I knew Rick from before and what he did. It seemed to line up really well, and especially to have books of business to cross-sell to and stuff. So, and what you find in crop insurance is typically if you gain a customer, you have to do something pretty egregious to lose that customer. So that winds up being probably certainly the more consistent service of what Midwest Ag offers or gets in terms of revenue. And that allows the brokerage and the marketing. And we're working every day. That's why we help guys market grain. And when we are more risk managers in that space, it does make it more consistent. But yeah, I mean, if it's just nice as a business to know what fits what we want to do and how we want to do that. And that's a service that we want to bring on board. So,
okay, so
crop insurance was a no-brainer.
You added crop insurance, so now it's commodity brokerage and crop insurance. Joel, you got more years to play in this sandbox. Is there another thing? Is there another diversification? Do your wife team up with Midwest Ag Advisors and it becomes commodity brokerage, crop insurance, and also wealth advisors? Is it that?
Well, I mean, I see an opportunity with it. I mean, that is definitely a business with all of the guys that are retiring. I mean, you sit there and over the span of their career, you help them with their money management. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, now what do I do? I mean, yes, I've got this land asset that I'm renting, but I also have, SEP IRA contributions, et cetera. Like, what do I do with that? So, I mean, I think that is one thing that is worth exploring and would be worth exploring. Obviously, as these guys retire, you're going to see more and more of an opportunity potentially with that bucket. One other thing that I think that we do as a business that we've brought on to the bucket of offerings is we write internal hedge to arrives through another FCM. The reason that we do that is because as these businesses are growing, our farmer clients, in order to hold hedge positions, it takes more and more of their working capital, right? So what is a way that we can allow them to go and make sales, do the right risk management thing, but not take up room on their balance sheet in order to write these hedge to arrive type positions? So we, again, offer that as one of our services where, guys can take these positions, but the market to market is being done through another institution rather than on, their operating note when they go to make their margin calls. So
lending organizations, community bank that deal in ag, and then the farm credit system got into crop insurance. So again, diversification for them because they have they have the same consolidation of customer base as you do. But you can't go that direction. You guys can't become bankers. So is that a threat? Is that a threat, or does it not even make the radar?
Great question.
Largely, I'd say doesn't even hardly make the radar. Not for us, at least. That's a different relationship, that a producer has. The big thing with what we do, if guys sell a futures position in a hedge account, they can have to put a substantial amount of money in there with margin calls, and we don't want to get too deep down that road of anybody who's doesn't have a deep understanding of how futures work, but a lot of money can be associated. And then the notion when you're losing money, even though it might be going in your favor and you've managed your risk, I'm paying money into an account and I feel like I'm not getting it back. So as Joel pointed out, being able to do it through a third party where that kind of eliminates that. But what every farmer wants is flexibility with where he goes. Totally. So they don't want to have to be, if they call the co-op and sell them 10,000 bushels, that's where it's going in the fall. Well, what happens when the ethanol plant down the road makes their bid better? Now I'm already sold to this guy. I can't go to the ethanol plant. So by going through a third party, we can allow them to hold that futures position, sit on the basis, and they can then, when it's time to deliver, take a peek, who's got the best bid, what makes the best sense of where to deliver, and then they can make that decision at that time.
Question. And sorry. No, I was going to say, as these growers are getting larger, that's even more of a value as well because they're covering bigger areas, right? So they may not know where obligations are for delivery.
That's exactly where I was going. With consolidation, obviously then comes increase in size and mass. So, we see it all the time. And there's 2 million farms. But again, as I pointed out, 105,000 of the farms in the United States of America produce 75% of all production ag revenue. So you are looking at this. Aimpoint Research, a guy named Brett Scotto was a guest on this very podcast. If you want to hear more about this, go and look him up. And he talks about what the farmer of the future looks like. It's an episode from released in June. So go and listen to it if you want. He says, okay, there's 105,000 farming operations that produce 75% of the revenue. And what we do, broad acre, larger scale commodity production, there's about 175,000 that are of consequence. And we're not being mean, but we're talking about not the 40-acre operator that does it as a piddle around. It's about 175,000. His information and prediction is that number will be cut by 2/3, down to about 65, 70,000 in the next decade. And that's because corn, soybean, wheat production favors size and scale, and the margins are pretty thin, so you need more acres. And as Joel alluded to, you've got larger equipment, autonomous equipment, all these kinds of things. that means there's going to be less customers. There are going to be less customers, but the acres stay the same. You're seeing this. The thing is, when they get larger and have more acres, they get more overtures, right? So it makes your job a little harder. Speak to that.
Have at it, Joel.
Joel.
Oh, I knew you were going to hit me with that one.
Well,
when you say overtures,
meaning other people are going to try to come in and swoop up that business is how I take it, right, Damian?
Yeah, absolutely. Because now it's like, oh my gosh, this operation went from 4,000 acres to 8,000 acres. I want those acres. So then they get more bangs on the door. They get more calls. They get more people trying to fly them to the Rose Bowl, whatever that thing should be.
So Eric brought up earlier in conversation, just talking about going and picking up clients. The nice thing about agriculture,
he made it sound easy. He made it sound like, you know what he does? Drives
what it's not
in the driveway.
Yeah, he did.
He said, drive in the driveway, throw out a business card. And you know what I think his secret thing is? The reason that I actually like the guy, he got me in Winton, Minnesota out for beers, and we drank premium grain belts. And once you drink premium grain belts on a 4-degree night in January in Winton, Minnesota, you feel like you're buddies with him.
Yeah, that's your shtick. There's no doubt about it. It works.
No, it's subconscious for me. I don't even know I'm doing that, Damian.
So strategy. And also, let's face it, that larger customer has a bit more power. You know, it's you can lose 700 acre operators. You don't want to, but you could. It's going to hurt 10 times worse if you lose a 7,000 acre because you sell bushels and insurance of acres.
Yeah. So anyway, the way he made it sound that it is easy to sell, it's actually really, it's not in ag. The nice thing is ag producers are inherently loyal. Yeah. You really have to do them wrong, harm, what have you, something of malice almost to lose them as a client, in my opinion. And that's a good thing. That's a testament to who these people are. Like, I mean, if you, build the deep relationship where, their kids, their, what their legacy of their business is and all this other stuff. I mean, they're going to want to continue to partner with you. And, that's something I, take comfort in our business, because I have the relationship with a lot of my clients where honestly, if a guy pulls up and solicits business with them, they call me and they're like, oh, you're not going to believe some guy from, so-and-so stopped by today and tried to, and the first thing that comes out their mouth is, we already got a guy, and he's been with us and he's, right. So really our biggest threat is that, the retirement and the succession and the what, because again, farmers want to find somebody they trust, and then that's who they're going to work with. So
do you think one of the strategies, and be honest, one of the strategies, if we're talking about consolidating ag customer base at the production level, a company like yours should be assisting the 4,000 acre operator to become the 8,000 acre operator, so that, because it's hard to go and get new customers, keep the ones you have and help them grow, because the growth is going to happen and the consolidation is going to happen anyhow. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Hands down. Yep. And that's, on so many levels, you kind of try to identify who those guys that are doing it the right way, and help them and, keep your ear close to the ground where the growth opportunities are, and try to say, hey, I see this might be an opportunity, or so-and-so might be retiring, or what, and you try and marry those relationships. And say, hey, I also work with this guy and this guy, and try and find where that works. It's not always going to. All you can do is put, the pieces in the right place and then see if it works. But it is in our best interest for that to happen, right? Because otherwise the next outfit sweeps in, takes the business, and it's gone forever. Well,
not gone forever, but you said the good thing, if you're doing a good job, unless you'll
prospect again,
unless you take a swing at the guy, he's probably not going to stop being a customer, right?
Right. No, for sure.
Hey, Eric.
And most of these guys trust us to take our advice if we were to say, maybe go and rent your ground to this outfit. They're a good group.
Right. And of course that can be touchy, because now one of your other customers says, well, why didn't you help me acquire that asset? Why didn't you help me get in there? And now it's almost like you're picking favorites, and that's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, it can be a slippery slope.
It is.
It's interesting because in most every other business, if I want to start selling widgets, I think, okay, my widget doesn't have infinite appeal. It doesn't have infinite customer base, but I can have widget, then a little cheaper widget for the cheaper demographic. I can have, with what we're doing in this business, you're not going to sell commodity brokerage to people outside of ag generally. The dentist in town might want to trade commodities, but in general, it's ag people, or the dentist is actually from an ag background, which is why he even cares about soybean futures, whatever. And crop insurance clearly is not going to be sold to anybody in suburbia. It's only for ag. So every other thing, Tesla can say, we're going to go ahead and have a cheap Tesla for, the single mom that whatever. You can't do that. So you can't just think about your customers are going to be ag people, period. And ag producers at that.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
One thing that I took away also, and we're going to wrap this up, without even stating it, all joking about how Eric's sales trick is take you to the Winton.
Wyndham.
It's the right town, right?
Wyndham.
See, I got it wrong. Winton's another town in Minnesota, but it's way up by Ely. Wyndham, and getting them in the grain belts. But all seriousness, you talked about bringing in a customer and getting out the crayons, which really was you joking about educating. And we love to talk about educating the consumer, and that's almost insulting at the ag level, telling, our suburbanites just need educated. But what you said, though, really was that's consultative selling. That's not going in the driveway and throwing out business cards. That's bringing in customers and making them stronger customers by saying, let me show you how we're going to help you make your business more successful. That's what I got from that, which isn't.
It's a value offering at the end of the day. Like, let us try to help you bring better value to your business. And Joel even touched on it. Maybe it's not with us. And honestly, I don't bring somebody in to work. I tell anybody, if you want to come in and learn more about futures and options, I'm more than happy to sit down and do that with you, whether you're a customer of mine or not. If I do a good enough job showing you the value you're looking for, then that the rest kind of takes care of itself. But I think as a whole for ag, we're better off the more educated the incoming generations that are going to be taking this over are. And that'll help our whole industry as a whole and us to continue to find success in it, provide service. So maybe less than provide services, to just find ways to provide good value to farmers. And at the end of the day, we live and die with our customers with how grain prices move. We watch it on a daily basis, and it's hard sometimes. Last few weeks have really sucked. The markets have got beat up pretty good, and it's not just it's not a face value thing for us. We don't intentionally go out and say, hey, I want to get to know you on a more personal level. We don't have much of a choice. That's the way this industry is. And so as we get to know these people deeper, it's important to us that they achieve their goals of what they're looking for, especially for financial stability of their operations.
That's a very good way to wrap it up, but we're not going to let him wrap it up. We're going to go to Joel because I like hearing what he has to say. And also, he's your voice of Midwest Ag Advisors. Every morning he puts out some commentary. So get me out of here. Close me out. What's the big takeaway? Selling to a consolidating ag customer base. What do I need to know on the way out the door here, Joel?
Well, as far as summarizing, I would just say, coming from some guys in risk management, find a partner in risk management. It's one of the most challenging things facing the farm today. We want to be your partner in a consolidating ag market. That's pretty much my takeaway at the end. My
big takeaway is that it's interesting. I proposed this subject over grain belts to Eric, and you thought about it, and it's something that we almost we know and accept in ag. Frankly, it's the same thing for me. I speak at agricultural conferences. There will be less of them 1 year from now than there were 5 years ago. We went from 6 big chemical companies to 4. We still got plenty of seed companies, but there's less than there used to be. We went from more machinery dealers than there used to be. It's the same thing. And we just accept it, that it's kind of like if you sold I drink Coke. Well, Coke is now trying to then switch you over to 0-calorie Coke. And they probably have they think there's 330 million Americans. Everybody can buy this. We don't have that. It's kind of a funny thing that we just accept. We're in a business that is, the acres stay the same, the production grows, but the customers stop being there through consolidation. It's one of the few industries that even goes that way, really.
Yep, absolutely. And ag is just it's its own animal. And, we just, as much as we can try to plan for that, we roll with the punches like everybody else. And it's kind of a learn as you go type of deal, trial by fire. I think Joel said it before, drinking through a fire hose, And again, what can be proof to us, hopefully, that we're doing what's right, is we have found ourselves with professionals that have come to us and wanted to get on board with what we're doing. So, and I think, Damian, and we shared this with you, our farmer meeting grew from 20 people to 40 people to 80 people to over 100 this recent year. And that's been, that hopefully is proof that we're doing something right, and
right. Yeah, it's that's why I had you on. You are successfully selling to a shrinking customer base in production ag. His name's Eric Lohse. Joel Farley's the good looking guy. If you want to check out what they are putting out every morning, where do they find that, Joel?
You can go on the App Store, look up Midwest Ag Advisors. The app is free to you at this point in time, so you can download it. Go under our commentary tab, and you can listen in. Usually about that 7:30, 8 o'clock, I pump out what it is that we're expecting for that day's trade.
That's central time, by the way. Which,
yep.
I'm in Arizona right now. It'll be 5:30. I am not going to wake up at 5:30 to hear you talk about corn. I'm just not going to do it.
You can get up, grab your cup of coffee, Damian, and then the comments are already there. We can also be found on the web. And all our contact information for all our brokers and agents is on that. MidwestAgAdvisors.com. Pictures of, the good looking guy, Joel, on there and stuff. But you can also get all our contact info there as well. So we're always happy to chat. That's what we do.
Got it. Till next time, that's Joel and Eric with Midwest Ag Advisors. And I think we did a really good job of talking about how you guys are doing it and what thoughts you have. I wrote down relationships, diversification of services and revenue, putting out things like apps that can help keep you touch with more customers and the current ones, offer more services. And then, of course, education, meaning how can you help them improve their business? That's the big takeaways. These guys are awesome. Till next time, I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Well, that concludes another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. This episode was brought to you by Pattern Ag. Everybody in agriculture understands the importance of soil health. We also keep an eye on our soil better than we ever did through advanced soil testing. But what if there was a company that provided predictive analytics, not just checking out nutrients and all the elements that are in there, but also could tell you the degree of risk you face with disease and pest pressure? That's right, Pattern Ag can do that. They actually can tell you, hey, you're going to have a real issue here. You can proactively treat for corn rootworm or cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome before the problem actually starts costing you yield. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to find the nearest rep that can help you start doing better for your soil.